anticipation as far as moving from here forward? Do you still think we're going to stay at the 2% or?
It's hard for me to say, Counselor, but I will say that during the month of April, we did have a huge payment, I think a $2.5 million payment go out to the tower project, which netted about almost $200,000 in GRT. So if you took that anomaly away just for that month, I think we might still see, it'd be a 10% decrease for that month. I can't say, if I could see the future, I wouldn't be here. That's what I tell Mr. Orpez all the time, but it is concerning that our region is seeing that kind of decrease, and I don't know if it's going to have a trickle-down effect at some point, but for now, I think it is a good sign that we are seeing a far less economic impact than our region.
This is a lot better than what we were anticipating for, what was it, 23%?
Yes, sir.
So we're obviously not in the bad shape that we anticipated that we would be.
At the current moment, no, we're not.
Yet.
Yeah, I can't tell the future, like I said, but
Obviously. Thank you.
all right.
Yeah, I just believe it's important to recognize that if it wasn't for that project with the tower, then we would be significantly less than that anticipation. So that's just a fortunate thing for us that we're putting up a water tower in the midst of this thing. So we'll look, yes.
Yeah.
And so we will see what we look for in anticipation to the future. Of course, we're seeing some pullbacks once again because we're seeing the COVID rise once again. So that's going to remain to be seen what will happen from that. Any other comments or questions from?
There was one other thing is
Yes,
the
sir.
month of April is when a lot of individuals got their stimulus checks, so the spending was increased at
true.
that point as well. So that may be and so when that rolls off, or in July, whenever the CARES Act unemployment may roll off, I don't know what's going to happen, but that may affect our GRT as well. So it's just something to think about.
Sure. Income
Okay.
tax returns as well. Some folks
Yes.
who may would just put that in savings or bank may have needed to utilize that at a time that maybe they usually would not. Okay, any other questions or thoughts? Okay, thank you so much, thank you. We got anything else in informational?
So Stephanie Mervine's going to come in and talk to you a little bit about lodgers tax and convention center. Here you go. You want this, Stephanie? Or you want me to change it for you?
Good morning. Good morning. Mr. Chair, Council, Stephanie Mervine, and I'm here to talk about lodgers tax and our most recent updated report for May, which is actually April's results for hotels, shows 8,18 room nights, which available in the market were 46,710. The occupancy for April reflected in May's report was 17.2%. As you can see, the month prior, 36.6. So due to the 25% occupancy maximum for the hotels, that was way down. I have some good news that for next month, it's up. So that is good, which you'll see next month. And I stand for any questions on that report.
Concerning the room report?
No.
All right, continue.
Okay,
Right.
thanks. Next report. I'm not sure if everyone is familiar with the STAR report, so I'll explain a little bit about what that means. We subscribe to a STAR report for the city of Roswell, and that is where all the hotels, 25 of them, submit their data to this report. So this report does not include certain elements, and the lodgers tax, as we all know, is 30 nights or longer, it's not included in that. So with the STAR report, we get a bigger picture, if that makes any sense. Does that make sense? Okay. Any questions on this?
Just out of curiosity, what does STR stand for?
Good question. So STR stands for the Smith Travel Research Company. They're a benchmarking company that the branded hotels hire. Roswell hotels have been doing this for 20 years. They've been in business for about 34 years globally. They are the pinnacle of reporting from the hotel side. Everyone subscribes to it. It's rather expensive, so you won't see the smaller motels subscribe to it. But I'd say any hotels that are more than 50 rooms total would subscribe to it. And it's great data. We're getting it for the first time here, but I've used it in other markets, and it really helps you understand what the hotels are doing, what type of business they're getting, how long people are staying in the hotels. I've talked to all of the hotels here to get an understanding of how they're doing and what they're working with, so it's very informative, and it helps us kind of do some forecasting for the future.
Does this have do you have to pay for the report?
Yes, we pay for it annually as a city.
How much do you pay?
It's about $1,200 annually.
Okay, thank
The
you.
hotels pay a lot more. So they actually use that data to build new hotels. So there are some hotels here that have multiple hotels, so it's really good data to show that you can have another hotel if the market's doing well, that translate into ownership and mortgages, and so there's a lot of leverage on this report for the hotels and for us.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions on STAR?
No questions?
Thank you. So the next slide is an analogy that I put together, which takes the STAR report data and the lodger's tax report. It does a comparison, and as you can see, I've highlighted the restricted occupancy in red, which is the COVID time. So the STAR report gets to us before the lodger's tax is completed. So you'll see where I have results before the lodger's tax result is completed. We give the hotels until the 25th of the month, the following month, to include their data. I get the STAR report within 10 days of the month ending. So I can get a little bit of a forecast of the STAR's information versus our lodger's tax revenue, and kind of do some forecasting and understand how we're pacing. And again, the results for next month are better, so that's good. The difference from the STAR and the lodger's tax is long-term stay. So for instance, oil and gas usually stays longer. That is not reflected currently in our lodger's tax, because after they stay 30 nights, that's refunded. In the STAR report, it is reflected because it's all of their data. So if you look at the numbers and I compare them, oil and gas is probably, or long-term stay, about 20% of the occupancy in the city of Roswell. Other things like the nurses that are coming and staying longer to help with the hospitals, that's also long-term stay. So some of the oil and gas that's gone away has been replaced with other long-term stay. So that kind of helps tell that story. Any questions on this report?
Any questions?
Good? Next report is our convention center fee report, which is the $2.50 that we collect. Again, you can see the trend is down. One thing to keep in mind on the convention center report, there is a 14-day where they're exempt from paying the tax or paying the $250 versus lodger's tax, which is a 30-day. So that report is always going to be a little different when you're looking at the revenue numbers. It's always going to be less.
Any questions? Okay.
you, Stephanie.
Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Thank you.
Good morning. Chair, Council, today I'm here to present our updated proposed ordinance for lodgers tax. Normally, this would go to legal, and it has. I don't have the clicker. May I have that? To kind of give you just a little bit of background and current status, so this had been presented at the legal committee back in April. It was heard, or almost going to be heard at City Council, and then they referred it back to legal committee to include language that would be effective yesterday by the state. So the changes that you see in our proposed ordinance are changes due to state legislation that would make us required to change it in our ordinance. It was sent to legal committee on June 25th, and it was the next item up, and unfortunately, we did have one city councilor leave, so we lost the lack of quorum, and so that is why we are presenting it today here at the Finance Committee. Here is just kind of an overview of what the state legislation did that will impact our ordinance that is being proposed today. There were two amendments. One of them was SB 106 that went into effect as of January 1st of 2020. That was part of the 2019 legislative revisions. The second legislative update was HB 117, which went into effect yesterday of 7/1/20. These, again, would make us update our proposed ordinance for our provisions based on these two legislative requirements. The biggest change in this lodgers tax between those two, SB 106 and HB 117, is the definition of the short-term rentals. I want to be very clear, this does not include apartment complexes. This is really like Airbnbs, VRBOs type of short-term stays, mostly used for transient accommodations. So we currently have 64 of those within our community right now that are available and that would fall under this new law by the state. Again, the background, the new law went into effect, part of it, SB 106, January 1st. What that one did is it closed the loophole for the exempt short-term rentals. So for example, if you had a home and you were renting out one room in that home, you were exempt from collecting lodgers tax. In our ordinance, we had 3, and so now we've removed that to comply with the state law. Vacation rental homes in New Mexico, they also are required to pay state gross receipt tax. That was part of it. Under the new law, no matter how many rooms you have, you're now required to pay the lodgers tax to a community that collects tax, which we do. For HB 117, this is the one that will impact us the most. It restricts the exemption for lodging for greater than 30 days, which means that the oil and gas that you just heard Stephanie talk about, the 20% that we've been missing out, we will now be able to collect that. It also adds a new subsection for the tax collected after 30 days that we can use for municipality purposes, which in this proposed ordinance, it's outlined, and it was required to outline it. Construction, maintenance, renovation of city-owned tourist attractions and related facilities, including sports tourism, financial support for public safety and community development, and promotion of economic development-related projects. So those would be the biggest impact to the ordinance that we would have to make based on the state legislation. This again is just the state statute where it's indicated, again, just another background information that we would see an increase in our lodgers tax revenue collections by passing this proposed ordinance, and I believe is to advertise for it because it is an ordinance. So you wouldn't be making the ruling today, it's just to advertise it. Here is just an idea of those short-term rental platforms that I was talking about. There's over 124 that people who are looking for, I'm sorry, 125, that people are looking for to, go to a community, that they would utilize this type of a platform to rent out a short-term rental place. And again, we do have 64 properties within Roswell. So the action today is to approve the amended changes as outlined in the state statute to update our city's lodger's tax provisions based on SB 106 and HB 117. In your packet, you have the red line version as well as the clean version of the ordinance, and I will stand for any questions.
Questions or comments from committee members? Councilor Roebuck?
Thank you, Chair. So what will be the process for somebody if they have an Airbnb now? How will they collect and pay this tax?
The same way that our hotels do.
Sure,
So they will be required, obviously, they have to have their business license. They will fill out the form, and they will have to submit their payment along with the form by the 25th of every month.
So it's a monthly task that is being given to these people who have Airbnbs?
Yes.
Okay. And that is through your office? That is through, who's the city contact on that?
So we just made the change effective yesterday. Stephanie has been training for the last month. The collection had been taken in finance, and it is now being managed by our office.
Okay, so then if people have questions or issues,
It will be Stephanie
you guys
Mervine.
will take care of that. Okay, thank
Yes.
you, Chair.
And may I add one thing? One thing that Ms. Mervine will be doing is, once everything is completed, we will be notifying not only the hotels, but the 64 properties that are currently registered of this change, as well as keeping them updated with trends in the market. I do think that's one opportunity that we have, having it under our department moving forward. It just really, the more stakeholders we can get involved that will impact tourism will be a benefit to us, and she's already started to develop a new process for that moving forward.
Okay. Other questions or comments? Councilor Orpesa?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Is there any penalties if they fail to pay the 250?
Yes.
Is that through the city or through?
Through both. So I believe through the city, we give them a grace period if they don't comply. In the past, we've had some property, maybe we don't give them a grace period, do we? I would think. Oh, we
There's no
don't.
grace
There's no
period.
grace period. Okay, I apologize. I misspoke. But in the past, we've had hotels that have not paid, and then they get a percentage.
It's actually
8%.
$100.
Yeah.
If they're
Fee.
late.
$100 to the
Fee
city?
From the
Or
city.
to the
The
state?
city, no, the city collects that,
The city?
yes.
And then they still have to pay back all of what is owed.
So is there a time limit that they have to pay, or?
Yes, they have until the 25th of each month. If they send it through the mail, it has to be postmarked on the 25th, or they have to bring it in by the 25th end of day. Starting on the 26th, the late fee is accessed.
Well, I'm talking about the late fee. Is there a time limit if
They should
fail-
be paying
if they
that
fail
on
to
their
pay?
next, they should be paying and which they do on their next payment that comes in.
Because I know we had one hotel that missed their payment for a number of months.
Yes, they were accessed a late fee.
And Mr. Orpesa, or Councilor Orpesa, may I add this to the council for reference and information? One of the things that we recognized as we were doing the training, as collections were coming in, if there was a hotel or a business, Airbnb, that had submitted money, we were just receiving money and putting it in for that month, but maybe that money wasn't particularly for that month, we will be revising that process. So for example, we will go back and revise your lodger's tax report because we believe that you should really be tracking the money that was collected for that month in that month's report. So the one property, if you'll notice, it was in 2017, in April, we had that one property and we saw a big increase that month. Well, it wasn't particularly for that month, it just showed that we collected it that month. What we should have done and will do moving forward is revise the report to show the money for every month that they missed, so that we don't have this big increase in that one month that it was collected. It'll be a true reflection of the money collected for that month in the report moving forward.
Okay, thank you.
Welcome.
Any other questions? I have just a few. One of them is, and it's just from my understanding, on page 23, which is actually the red line, at section 2, number 1, if a vendee, if I could just understand better, it says, with the occupancy tax shall not apply if a vendee has a permanent residence of the taxable premises for a period of at least 30 consecutive days unless those premises are temporary lodging. I'm just trying to wrap my mind around that. So if it is temporary lodging, but it's over 30 days, they are still paying the fee?
Yes.
What constitutes temporary lodging?
Pretty much for most of the hotels and Airbnbs in this, it would be, it could be business, it could be leisure, anything that's not permanent. But I do have Parker, our deputy city attorney, here to go over that.
Okay, thank you.
So this was one of the changes that comes directly out of the amendments that were made. And so if you go up, it's actually a defined term on page 23 of your packet towards the top. Temporary lodgings are lodgings for the purpose of housing a vendee within proximity of the vendee's employment or job location. And so the idea here is that if you're staying for more than 30 days, because you're here to be close to your employment, but it's not your primary residence, you haven't moved here yet, you're just here, staying for 60 days or whatever for your job, you fall within this, you are now subject to lodger's tax, which is distinct from somebody who came for some other purpose, such as, I guess if you wanted to stay in Roswell for 60 days for leisure, then you would not be subject to the tax after the 30th day. So that's a hard distinction to draw, but that's what the legislature has done.
And it just, so, yeah. And that's part of my clarification. This is something that legislation has done.
Yes, sir.
So in all reality, there's no really way to really make this distinction. I mean, like often I go to hotels and they'll ask me what is my purpose for traveling, and I choose to tell them or choose not to. If someone chooses not to, I guess they could forego the tax.
Yes, sir. This is a flaw that I have also identified in how this would actually apply. Like I say, we have to go with what the state has given us.
Absolutely.
So I will say that the way that I have tried to adapt this is that if you go down to page 24, we've amended section 23-6, which is their reporting requirements, and we're adding the line. It's in red. And so part of what they're going to be reporting is including the amount of tax derived from the 31st day and subsequent, from the 31st and subsequent days a vendee rents lodgings in taxable premises.
Okay.
So the idea there is that any tax that they're getting from somebody they are the ones, there's no way that we could possibly know who's staying at a hotel for different purposes. And if we just get it in a lump sum from them, we're not going to be able to segregate out. This is the stuff that comes from the 31st day and after. And that's very important because what the legislature has done is created a kind of another tier of lodger's tax that you can apply to different purposes for this 31st day and after income. And so the idea is that we put it back on them. You guys figure it out and tell us this is the amount that came from temporary lodging.
Okay, wonderful. And just for the record, I'd spoken with Parker and Juanita beforehand. There's a few just grammatical things that they're going to fix in here, just cleaning up. The more I've looked at that one, number 4 there on page 20, should we just, is that verbiage per legislation, or is that our verbiage where maybe summer and the word "or" can just be taken out because camps can be 12 months out of the year? At the very top of the page, I'm sorry.
Oh, let's see, sorry.
Right here.
Let's see.
You know if that was,
I believe that comes out of, I'll check.
if
At
it
summer
comes
or
from
camps.
legislation, maybe just the
Oh.
word "or" strictly.
Let me look at that. That probably is maybe a typo. I'll try and find that out.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
So that would be fine, and that is all the questions that I have. Does anyone else have any questions or comments? Okay, do y'all have anything else to add? Are y'all ready for us to vote? Okay. What we will be voting on will be, is the proposed ordinance 20-05, which will update Article 1 for lodger's tax. And this will need to go to full council for consideration of holding a public hearing. So that will need to be included in the motion. Do we have a, I would entertain a motion at this time.
I'll make a motion to advertise and hold a public hearing on proposed ordinance 20-05 to update Article 1 lodger's tax of Chapter 23 of the Roswell City Code.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion passes. Going forward.
Mr. Chair, we have Mr. Stark here to present item number 2.
Okay, airport fee structure.
The clicker's right there. I'll hand him out.
Good morning, councilors. So what you have in front of you is a resolution to change some of the fees at the airport and to establish a master fees list, which we currently do not have. I'm not sure how to make this thing go forward. There we go. So the things that we already have landing charges, we already have parking charges, we already have flow fees, and they're in different locations. So what we're attempting to do here is to put everything in one location. Currently, our flow fees are in city code in Chapter 5 aviation, and it appears that they have not been touched since 1984. So they have not been updated for a long time. Our landing and parking fees are in Resolution 10-25, which have not been changed since 2010. So we're due a review and an update. What was just handed out to you is the spreadsheet that kind of captures everything that we're trying to do. I think there's one note that I didn't get on there, which I'll talk about in a little bit on the flow fees. But basically what we did is we started last year with doing internal review and research and looking at what other airports do. We're required to do that by the FAA and typically out to a 500-mile radius. Now granted, that's based on what information you can get. It's not mandatory that you get information from every airport within 500 miles, and of course it isn't necessarily relevant that you get airport information from airports that are not like yours. So we try to look at airports that have similar services, similar operations numbers, and those type of things. So that's what you see on there. And because it was easy to do thanks to Wyoming DOT, you see a lot that came out of that report on there that are a little bit further than 500 miles away, but it helped to round out the numbers that we have. So I'll start with we'll start with the chart that you have, and we'll go over the fuel flow and then run down all the way to the fees on the end. So on fuel flow, since they had not been updated for so long, we did our surveys and we went out and got our numbers. And honestly, if you look across the board, we just more or less averaged what we saw there to come up with our numbers. But the things that we wanted to do was, you see signatory and non-signatory, which not every airport did that, and we've never done it. When we looked in the ordinance before, there was no ability to charge our airline services a flow fee at all. And quite honestly, we may not charge the airline a flow fee, but we want the ability to negotiate that. When you look at what happens at other airports and the way they relate to the airlines, typically they either charge a landing fee or they charge a flow fee. And so when we're wanting to negotiate a contract with our airlines, we'd like the ability to consider the flow fee. Most likely, we will lean toward landing fees because those are easier to do. But that's why you see this in here as a signatory at 4 cents on jet fuel. That's something new for us. Previously, jet fuel was 2 cents and it was 0 for the airlines. Then the other piece of it is the avgas, which actually is a very small piece of what we get for flow fees. So we bump the avgas up from 4 to 6. We don't get a lot of money off of that, and quite honestly, general aviation is always under the gun and in the sense of struggling to be even in existence. So we don't want to hurt general aviation. We certainly don't want to hurt our local general aviation pilots. And so that's why that went to 6. It's a smaller number. It doesn't make a lot of difference to us yearly, and it helps them by only going up to 6. But since those numbers haven't been changed since probably 1984, it's time to change them to something. The jets, as you look at that, you look across the numbers, those run anywhere in the 5 to 7 range. Most of them are closer to 8, so we feel like 8 is a good number. When we start looking further west, into Phoenix at some of the bigger airports and then go into California, these numbers get outrageous. I mean, it's apples and oranges, but just an extreme example. The rates in the LA basin were around $3. And it's like, holy cow. But that's a huge hit for flow fees. So I want to stop there and take any questions that you might have on flow fees.
Questions, comments on flow fees? Okay.
Okay. So, the one thing I didn't mention, we did look at all of this, flow fees and landing fees both. We did vet this through the airlines. We sent out an email and said, hey, we're looking at this. We sent them the proposed schedule. We got no comments back whatsoever. Not sure that we expected any, but we didn't get any comments, in negative or positive, either one. Okay, so moving on to landing fees. Again, you see signatory versus non-signatory, which is what I just covered. We want to be able to negotiate that with the airlines. Our current landing fees run 50 cents per 1,000 pounds aircraft weight, and that's based on minimum takeoff weight. One thing that we noticed as we were doing our surveys is that it's a mix of minimum takeoff weight and minimum landing weight. So minimum landing weight is going to be lower than, or not minimum, maximum takeoff weight, maximum landing weight. The maximum landing weight is going to be a bit lower than the maximum takeoff weight. So when you look at the changes, it may not be that full 70% increase that I've got in the notes there. It's going to fluctuate by aircraft a bit, but that we were trying to look at just some numbers to talk about with you guys. So currently, when we look at landing fees, we would be generating a 70% increase on that. And right now, I was looking at my notes. Right now, we're running 159,000. Actually, I think I've got my numbers wrong. I'm looking at my notes and I'm going, that doesn't make any sense to me. Sorry. But anyway, so right now we're running about 159,000. No, never mind. I'm confusing myself again. I'm looking at the wrong number. So landing fees run currently about $4,000 a month, and the increase would be to $6,800 for new. That is what that would be. So yearly, we would be generating quite a bit more of increase on the landing fees. The one thing that's different is that we've been trying to change the way we're supporting our ARF maintenance. In the past, we've had to support it out of the fire department budget, and realistically, that should probably be supported out of the airport budget. So when we look at doing that, Santa Fe was the only example that we had, as they charged an extra $1 per 1,000 pounds to their airlines, because the airlines are why we have to have the ARF services. That would generate $87,800 a year to cover the maintenance on those ARF fees. That, when we look at what
Scott,
we're paying.
can I clarification of it, because I want everyone to understand on the ARF fees, that's $1 per 1,000 pounds, correct?
Correct. So if we're looking at our current airliners, that their landing weight would be about 65,000 pounds, you would generate $65 extra in landing fees per landing.
Okay. And so others here are not having that, but we don't know where they're taking that finances to cover that out of, what portion of their budget they're utilizing for their.
Correct.
So this will allow us to better support that from the airport versus the
Correct.
general. Okay.
And-
So
and go ahead.
that helps to better understand also with the non-signatory and the signatory, just the 85 cents there, because I was looking at that, trying to understand why we weren't possibly looking at more, but that ends up bringing that up substantially more, even though that number's not going to be kept towards just the airport. It's going to be, that dollar per 1,000 pounds is going to go towards the other. So just wanted to make sure that was clarified.
Correct. And what we've experienced, that number would well cover our maintenance costs. What we've experienced in the last year is around $50,000 in maintenance costs on the 3 ARF trucks that we have. Is that typical? It's the first year we've done it, so I can't tell you 100% whether that's typical or not, but it would easily cover it. And so it ties the need for it back to the actual cost, rather than having the fire departments have to support that.
Very good, very good. Any other questions or concerns on that? And I'm sorry I interrupted you in the middle of that. Did you have more you were wanting to share concerning the landing fees?
Yeah, that was the example I wanted to share on the landing fees. When it was 4,000 current is about what we get, and that increase would bring it up to 6,800 typically per month.
That's at the 85,
That's at the 85.
not counting the.
Correct.
Any questions, comments? Okay, parking.
Okay, on parking, what we've done with parking is we didn't move up much, but what we wanted to do was take a look at the system that we have. Right now, the system that we have is broken down into 3 different groups by weight. And the lower $7 a day, we really only have a couple of those. We have almost none. When you look at my example, I made the numbers up to just so we could compare apples and apples. But so the $7 a day would be under 99,000 pounds, and then 100,000 pounds to 200,000 pounds is the $10 a day. Above 200,000 pounds is $1,400 a day. But what that does to us is a 757 or an Airbus 321 both weigh over 200,000 pounds maximum takeoff weight. But so does a 747-800. It's 1,000,000 pounds. They both pay the $14. And so what we thought about was we didn't want to reinvent the wheel. What we wanted to do was look at something that already was out there, that existed, that people understand, that differentiates between these different size airplanes. And so what we decided was the best to use was an FAA system that's based on the Aircraft Design Group. And so that breaks it up into 6 different categories. Now, we typically, if you look at my example, we typically will not be parking any Group 1s, and we typically will not be parking any Group 5s. The Group 5s are the new 777, 900s, 1000s, and the Airbus 380s, that size of aircraft. They have a really long wingspan. We don't anticipate getting those any in the near future, but our system encompasses those if we ever do need to. So in the example, I put a typical breakdown of what we had before we got 475 airplanes on the airport. And so, what you look at, the total for that would have been about $1,550 per day. Under the old system, it's going to go up to $1,750 per day under the new system, and that difference is about 13%. So it does make a difference for us when you look at the yearly. 1.9 million is what we would get under the old system, and 2.15 million is what we would get for the year under the new system. So a little difference. That would change drastically if we got a large number of large aircraft. In the past, I think these breakdowns are pretty typical. Most of the aircraft that we had have been in that middle group. in the 10 group or in the group 3, the narrow bodies, and we still have a lot of those out on the airport. But our ratio of the group 4 aircraft has most likely gone up now that we have a lot of 777s and a lot of 767s, those size aircraft. The 777s would be in the group 5, but just for example. So we will see that tick up. The numbers will be different than what I have here. I was just trying to come up with a good example where we could compare apples and apples. Questions on that?
Questions or comments? The only question I would have, this is pretty much for an overall, but it's a good time to bring it up. When were the parking fees last changed?
We're proposing January 1st of 2021.
But when were they changed last?
Oh, when were they
Previously?
changed last? 2010. That would have been in the resolution 1025.
So, I don't know how. It's one of those things, city government deals with so much that it tends to get in a place of forgetfulness, but I appreciate this coming forward and even thinking outside the box on some of these issues. How often should we be looking at these for possible?
So I would say that probably about every 5 years would be a good cycle to look at them. Quite honestly, what I see out there is they don't change that quickly. We're not that far behind in terms of changing. When we canvassed a lot of stuff out there, some of their numbers were really pretty old too. So we don't see a lot of change, even in the other airports, and there's not that many that do exactly what we do either. But I would say, every 5 years, a look-see and see if we're still in the market is probably a good idea. Would we need to go up every 5 years? Who knows? Depends on the market. And that's really what it comes down to for us, is that we want to stay competitive.
Absolutely.
And if we're not competitive, then we're not going to get these airplanes, but we also don't want to be so far behind that we're cheating ourselves.
Exactly. So I don't know who keeps that 2025 calendar book, but that'd be great to put down there for, okay. All right, so we've got that now, badging and then escort and photography.
So the badging and all of that is relatively new to us. Up until we changed to the Category 3 security level, we had our own system of badging. We weren't using these badges. We had our own badge that looked a little bit different. And we didn't charge anything for them. People would come in and we'd badge them and we'd send them out there. The security checks were different. We weren't required to do fingerprinting. We weren't required to do security threat assessments. Now we are required to do all those things, and there's a cost to us for each one of those. So the security threat assessments cost about $6. The fingerprints cost us about $25. That's just the cost for accessing that system and going through those checks. Our administrative costs, of course, are hourly on our people. The physical supply costs, each of these cards are $5 a piece, whether it's a card for the high security area, the sterile area, or the SIDA area. The cost for that chipped card is $5. So we're rolling those costs into the fees. That's why you see that they're different. And currently, we're charging barely enough to break even, and we're really not accounting for our administrative costs. We're not accounting for any maintenance costs on our printers, any supply costs for printer ribbons and laminate that goes on the cards. There's a hologram that's laminated on the card. So we're really not accounting for those things, and that's why the increase and why the breakdown under the new system. And when we compare to others, you can see in the chart that realistically we're still probably a lot cheaper than most of the other places. So trying to be reasonable, not trying to make money on it, just trying to recuperate our cost and make sure that we have enough buffer that as prices go up on our supplies that we're covered. The lost and unreturned numbers that you see on there, we're trying to incentivize people to be responsible. I think that's what you'll see in the other places too in general, that if someone just doesn't return one, we're going to charge them $100 for that badge. If they lose it, same thing for the first time. If they lose it a second time, we know they're really not being responsible, and we're going to penalize them further. And that's really that's the point on that. Questions?
Questions or comments? Okay, escort fee and photography.
Okay. Escort fees are something we've never done, but also take up a lot of our time and cash. And quite honestly, the same thing here. We're not looking to do anything but recoup our people time. So that would include the overtime fees if it happens to be after hours. At that 50, we would have a good number that we wouldn't be losing things. And honestly, it's not, right now, that escort fee is not encompassed in anything, but if we have to pay overtime, we're charging that back to people now. But it's just not captured anywhere. And so we wanted to capture that in this document.
And commercial photography.
And then commercial photography is another one we really don't do much of. So, but if you're looking at the way that works, that would be someone coming in to do a film or a commercial and they want to use something on our airport. We would charge the escort fees on top of that, and the $50 is purely for use of the property per day.
Any questions or comments on any of the proposed fees? All right, you got anything else to add?
I think not. I think I'm in pretty good shape.
One thing I will share is that when this goes, if this is approved from this committee and goes to full council, I would like to see on the abstract, because my understanding is the airport
Advisory Commission.
Advisory Commission, they have looked at this as well. And what was their vote on that? Was it unanimous?
They looked at it in the February meeting and referred it to legal, which of course we missed last time, and the mayor wanted to go ahead and get it on here, so that's why it's here. But yes, they did refer it to council.
And it was, that was a unanimous vote?
It was unanimous.
So I think that's just important to have on the
Okay.
abstract for the council meeting.
We will note that.
All right. Any other questions, comments? All right, I will entertain a motion that we send the resolution adopting, the resolution for the new fee structure for the aircraft use and facilities and service furnished by the Roswell Air Center.
Mr. Chair, I move that we recommend to the full council Resolution 20XX Airport Fee Structure.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to send to full council at the next council meeting. Any other discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion passes. All right, thank you
Thank you.
so much. Thank you. And what else have we got? Who's coming up for us?
Mr. Chair, we will be discussing our resolution for our final budget for fiscal year 2021, and Mr. Juan Fuentes will be talking to us.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, committee members. This will be a joint effort.
Just real quickly, today is the last day. Today is it, right?
That's right.
And
This was my life's work for the last year.
this was his life's work for the last year, right? So we appreciate your service to the city of Roswell very much, and wish you Godspeed and whatever you've got for the future. Okay. Thank you so much for all your work. God bless. Sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Again, as stated, this will be a joint effort with Steve and myself. And basically, we just wanted to kind of, this will be the second meeting of the Finance Committee where we can address any questions. As we presented and the city manager submitted the budget to the council and the committee. And this is just kind of shows all of the tabs on the budget. And what we're just basically providing here is just what the budget shows in regards to just the budget recap for the general fund, for all of the different special revenue funds, and for the all of the enterprise, which include some of the capital project funds as well. But what's really important is moving forward and what are the next steps. Again, obviously the Finance Committee reviewing the budget, and if there are any amendments, which then will be presented to the City Council, which is today for today's meeting. July 9th, if there are any amendments that the committee wants to send forward to the council, we can do so That's where we can be here today to address any of those changes. Of course, this is all contingent upon reconciling the final numbers for the fiscal year we just ended, which then will be reflected for the final reporting and final budget to be presented on the July 23rd special meeting. And with that, Mr. Chair, we will stand for any questions, and our Deputy City Manager is here as well to answer any questions as well.
Okay, the purpose is we have the task as Finance Committee to anything that needs to be amended, any concerns that we have as a committee, I'd like to see those made now so that staff has the time to put those together. And then full council will have the same opportunity to consider any amendments so that in the July 23rd, this can go smoothly, and we've got a final product that we can send to Santa Fe and that we can work underneath and to make things go. Are there any counselors on the committee? And I apologize, Counselor Stubbs, I'm just recognizing that you're here. You're behind Margaret there, I didn't see you. So I apologize if there was something you had to say on any of the other items, but if there are any of the counselors on the committee, I'll start with, that have any concerns or desires for any kind of amendments to the proposed budget. Counselor Oropesa.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have several concerns on the budget. Number one concern that I have is the reclassification of several positions and the buyout.
I apologize. And it's my fault, not yours. I don't have my hearing aids in this morning. Could you pull the microphone a little closer? Thank you. And then if you could just state your reclassification of.
Reclassification of certain positions
Okay.
and the buyout. I have a big concern because in reviewing, 46 individuals on the list, there's some very high-ranking positions on that list that we're going to be missing out on a lot of experience. And I don't know what kind of plan there is, or if there is a plan in place of how to address those positions. The other concern that I have is the number of positions being lost on certain departments. The fire department, for instance, has 6 individuals that are on the buyout list. And obviously, I think this the top two ranking positions are on that list, starting with the chief. And so I have a lot of concerns of how that's going to work. What plan is there, or is there a plan to address once these individuals leave? How does staff intend to replace them? Or are they going to get replaced? How is the work going to get done if you're going to be missing so many people? And not just in this department, there's other departments that are missing quite a few individuals, and yet my understanding is we are still holding the department heads accountable to make sure that the work gets done, even though they are missing 3 or 4 or 5 individuals. Is there a plan in place right now to address those issues?
If I may, if I can answer just a portion of that, and then I'll ask staff. Number one, I would say that the matter at hand is the budget itself right now, and the possibility of making amendments. The reclassification of positions is not part of the budget process of us approving or denying. It's not in as far as,
But it has an effect on the budget,
it has
Mr.
an
Chair.
effect on the budget, but it is not part of the, there's nothing that can be amended in this
Well,
document.
if you don't want to discuss it, then there's no
No,
reason for me to
I-
continue.
If you'll give me a moment, I didn't interrupt you at all, Councilor Orpesa, so if you'd be as kind to me as I've been to you. Thank you. My point is that there's nothing, unless you have an amendment that you can make concerning this budget, we can discuss those things. But I just want to make it very clear that I don't know of anything that you've brought so far. I've been very patient as a chair of this committee and have said to the committee members and the full council, please, if you have any concerns on the budget itself, to bring the amendments so that we can make those things work. I'm just stating the fact that the reclassification is not something that is being voted on within the budget itself. So that's all I'm saying. It can be discussed, but I don't know that that's something that an amendment can fix. So if staff has something they'd like to add.
And, Mr. Chair and Councilor Oropesa, again, we're here to address questions on the budget. In regards to that, the personnel and some of those changes, that it would be something that upon the return of our city manager, then that would be, he would be the one in a better position because I don't have any prepared information to present on that. We were prepared to address the budget. So I will certainly pass that along when he returns, and we'll definitely be discussing that further with him. But at this time, again, we were just prepared to address any issues or concerns on the budget that has been submitted.
Well, I may be wrong, but to me, when you talk about budget, you talk about everything that is being paid for, is being brought in. Anything that you spend or you bring in affects the budget. So, but if you don't want to discuss it, then so be it.
Councilor Orpesa, no one has alluded at all to a desire not to discuss it. My question is, I would entertain an amendment if you have one to the current budget. That's the only thing I'm asking. If you have an amendment, I am as chair am welcoming that opportunity for you.
You asked for concerns, Mr. Chair, and also amendments. I don't have an amendment. I just want to voice my concerns for the record.
Okay.
That I do have these concerns as far as this budget is concerned, of how it's affecting some departments and the community as a whole. That's all I'm saying.
Absolutely, and those concerns are heard, and staff is making notes of those, and I'm sure they will share that with our city manager. And if there's anything outside of that we can do to help with better understanding on that, I'm sure that staff can bring that to us. Did you have anything else, Councilor Orpesa?
Nope.
Okay. Councilor Roebuck.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just as a point of clarification, we've already executed the early retirement / voluntary layoffs, correct? That's executed, that's done, that's no matter what we do with this budget, that's the concerns that Councilor Pesa has brought up, we're gonna have to deal with those regardless. There's something that we can't dial that back. I just wanted to be perfectly clear on that. So, I do think that certainly, Orpesa does bring up some valid concerns. Obviously, when it's hard, you make these decisions on trying to cut budgets, and it's a hard thing when you look at talent and manpower is extremely valuable. It's very important to any organization. It's your most valuable, people capital is your most valuable piece that you have, and certainly, I think that's a hard, choice that, staff has had to make, is like, and I do appreciate that we haven't had to do any involuntary layoffs outside of the temporary staffs that we did at the very beginning. We did let the temporary staff go, which isn't technically a layoff, but in effect it's the same thing. So I would address that. I do think that there is a lot of talent in the fire department at all levels, And while we do have a good chief and assistant chief or associate chief or deputy chief, thank you, I am confident that even if we didn't look outside, which obviously we can look outside to replace those positions, but even within the ranks that we have right now, we have plenty of qualified people to step up and fill those roles. The fire department has not been lax about training, about developing talent, developing leadership. So while I certainly respect and agree with Councilor Pesa's concern about losing human capital, I think especially in the case of the fire department, I think that we're gonna do just fine. We've got a great bench there. I yield.
And I want to echo that, Councilor Orpesa's thoughts. I think we can all agree with it. It is to some concern when we have high-ranking positions that now come open. Part of when our city manager looked at this, you can never tell what positions, who's going to want the desire to do so and who's not going to want to. And in that balance, you sort of hope that you're going to come out in a steady balance. And I think that any time we have some of those big positions like you're speaking of that are lost, it does send us a little cringe of nervousness, but I think that many of those directors, many of those people who have been in those positions have done a great job of bringing those underneath them to a place where they can hold those departments together while those decisions are being made on what to do in those higher positions. So time will tell.
The only thing I would add, Mr. Chair and Councilor Roebuck, is you are correct. The deadline has already ended, but we do have some folks who are already in the final, I guess, stages of getting those numbers from the state with PERA, so we can finalize those. But the majority of them have already been executed, and it's just that there's just some final numbers that we need to receive from some of those folks that signed up.
Are there any other things any committee members would like to share? Yes, sir.
The only thing is, again, I feel very uncomfortable not knowing whether there is a plan or not as to how the staff is going to move forward with all the personnel that we're losing. And I know it has nothing to do with budget, but it still has to do with budget, because it will have an effect.
Councilor Orpesa, I think that maybe this would be a good time to bring in Mike, since Joe's not here, and maybe he can speak to some of your concerns there.
Mr. Chair, Councilor Orpesa, we actually, to answer the question about the fire department, I'm very confident in the 6 division chiefs, battalion chiefs that we have at the fire department that is more than capable of stepping in on an interim basis till we finalize some things. What's this department going to look like? What's the direction of that department that's going to be taken in the future? Because we've got some big questions to answer in the future, such as medical services, ambulance services, things like that I know the fire department for a number of years have desired to take over that ambulance service. So we need to put all that information together and have that conversation again. Whether or not we do it or not, that's a question for later, but we need to have that conversation again. I'm very confident in the abilities of the people there to take it on and take on that task. We actually have a meeting scheduled next week, myself and the city manager, with the 6 division chiefs or battalion chiefs with the fire department, and then we'll be bringing them in individually to discuss the department and determine which one will operate in that interim position for the next 6 to 9 months, as we see what's going to happen with our finances, first of all, and then determine the direction and the things that we need to focus, reprioritize the things in that department and move it forward. Very grateful, great knowledge that we're losing there with our chief and our deputy chief. However, both of them have exceeded they could have retired at any time. They're both over their 20 years, so we could have lost them this year. I fully expected both of them to retire this year. It just so happens they're both leaving at the same time. That's their right. But I'm not concerned about the fire department. I know them guys down there. I've worked with them for a number of years, and I'm very confident in the abilities that they have to keep it together.
Thank you, Mike.
Might I just say as well, and it's not just the fire department, there are other departments as well, but we've had great success in the city of Roswell of being able to make those transitions during those times. I remember in the city planners department when Zach was with us, there was that interim time between Zach and Michael Vickers, and we brought strength, and we were able to continue. There was that interim time between Michael Vickers and the next one, and we continue. So those things happen with the airport property manager, when Spencer was with us for so many years, then Spencer left. There was that interim time. Chief of police, when we had Smith, there was that time where Smith left us sort of suddenly, and then we had Mayor Kentai. He thought we'd forgotten those years, but where he stepped in for that interim time. Then we had Chief Solis come in, then we had that interim time. And any time, whether we're going through a situation where we have offered early retirement versus a time where they take the retirement, there's always going to be that time where you've got that unknown. But I'm grateful to say that City of Roswell's had some really great employees who love what they do, and they've stepped up to the task. And that's what I'm being hopeful of at this time as well. I think to your concern, Councilor Pesa, it's more at one time than on the norm. But I think that there are many communities going through this, and I think that those that are here with Roswell are here because they love Roswell, and I think we'll see a dedicated team move forward. Some great things.
And if I could just say, Mr. Chair, this is a great opportunity to take in each of our departments and look at them, reevaluate these departments, the services that we provide, the level of services that we provide. So we're actually bringing in each department, and as we do this, to discuss personnel so that we don't get in a position like over the last number of years to where if somebody comes into the deputy city manager and says, I need 3 more people to provide this level of service, and I sign off on it, or vice versa, the city manager signs off on it, and we're not on the same page. We're trying to have these discussions with each of our departments so that anytime we hire any individual in the city, myself, the city manager, the finance department, human resources, Mr. Fuentes, we're all in the room together. And so that there's no surprises. We know where the money's coming from to pay this salary. We know what the function of this new position is going to be, and we don't end up, as we've discussed over the last several years, on the amount of employees that we had versus some other communities that maybe we were a little heavy. So I feel like we're pretty lean now, and this is a great time to look at each of these services and realize or determine what do we want to provide. What do we want it to look like going forward? So we're having those discussions with each department now. We've had 3 of them so far, and we'll continue to do those. Typically, we do them on Fridays, try to do one on a Friday, and bring in that department head, break down their department, number of people they have, what does each of these employees provide, and try to move it forward.
All right. Any other questions or thoughts, concerns? Councilor Stubbs, did you have anything? Okay. All right, Mr. Mayor, do you have anything to add? Okay. All right, with that being said, what I would like to see is for the Finance Committee to send then what we currently have to full council for consideration of the final budget. So I would entertain a motion.
Mr. Chair, I move that Finance Committee refers to the full council recommendation to approve final budget as presented by staff, Resolution 20XX Final Budget FY 2021.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Do we have any other discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, same sign.
Aye.
Okay, motion passes. If I could just say, just as a follow-up, let's try to keep in mind and keep in focus that even if we had extra money to throw into the budget, it does not change those positions that people have have taken advantage of and are leaving us. It doesn't change who we hire, it doesn't change who we don't hire at this time. So if we could now, as we send this to full council, try to keep those two issues in consideration where they belong there, okay? Any public participation? Did anyone sign up for today? Okay, no one's online? Okay. Anything else that needs to come before us? Okay, it is 10:14. Thank you all for coming out this morning. Please stay safe out there. We will call the meeting adjourned.